What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me tonight from the East Coast, Damian Dabrowski. What's up, Damian?
Week 8, man. That's half the season. I don't know. I don't know where it went, but it's half the sandwich, as they say. We only got half the sandwich left here, so even less for fantasy purposes. So really got to make the most of it.
Let me ask you the same question I asked Ronald on Monday. Is there a player or a situation that you've changed the way you thought about it coming in pretty significantly? A guy you were out on that you were wrong about, a guy that you were gonna thought was gonna be awesome, like Tyreek Hill, and you just thought he was gonna be wasn't not gonna be very good, and he turns out he's actually gonna be a top 15 receiver. It's amazing how that works.
We'll see. We'll
Obviously,
see.
obviously, injuries can affect a lot of things. But is there a player that's really impressed you or really let you down this season?
Well, it's not so much kind of the real big names. Obviously, there's some disappointments there, and there are each season. But I think I was kind of looking at a lot of my teams, and I think Jamison Crowder and Willie Snead are two guys that I think, and for various reasons, but that kind of going into draft season, I was pushing up my boards. They just seemed like, especially in PPR formats, even in half point PPR, just guys that had very solid floors, and would be really good as kind of a third receiver on your team if you went with some more volatile guys with your earlier picks. And they've both just been a disaster. Obviously, Snead had that suspension come in, and then the injury, he really hasn't done anything. And Washington's just been weird all around. I think with kind of the disappointment that Terrell Pryor has been and Jordan Reed, it's been a little crazy to see that Cousins has actually been able to kind of maintain it. Despite that, just basically by kind of spreading it around and the emergence of Chris Thompson there. But if anything, I think the kind of it's fresh in our minds, but I think Carson Wentz basically kind of looking like a top 5 quarterback is probably the biggest surprise in terms of something I don't think anybody really saw coming. If you look at his ADP, he was still, the 18th, 19th quarterback off the board. So unless you were in a super flex or, a 14 teamer, chances are he wasn't even drafted. It's just crazy what he's doing. And it's not even, due to pure volume. His efficiency just been off the board. And the rushing's really ticked up. I mean, 63 yards on Monday night. So I think that's a guy that's really kind of, if we're looking at kind of the top 5, top 10 at a position going forward, has gone from being complete afterthought to being, at the top of that position group right now. And kind of touching on my earlier point, I think the bigger takeaway has been just the inconsistency that we've seen really both from running backs and receivers, in the sense that there's just not a lot of guys that you can count on in terms of, volume, like aside from Le'Veon Bell. There's just not a lot of backs that are getting 25 touches a week, and you can just play them regardless of matchup. There's just so many teams shuffling guys in. We're going to deal with that in Oakland now with the Lynch suspension. The Patriots are pretty much using 4 running backs. We see what's going on in Minnesota. Chris Thompson in Washington. I just think it's guys that maybe have just a third down role or are only getting even 30-40% of the market share at their position, have just become more relevant than the past. I think it's kind of been a combination where you're seeing more players become used in these offenses, and kind of the studs we're used to aren't getting the same volume that they have in the past. And it's something that we have to adjust to.
Yeah. Carson Wentz is a great name. Dak Prescott is right there for me. Both those guys, like Wentz was a guy that I thought could be pretty good based surely on volume, and it hasn't been a volume thing. It's been an efficiency thing, which is, I think, really impressed me in terms of his potential kind of going forward. It is a guy that I'm a lot more excited about. And the Dak Prescott for me, I did not see this coming. I did not see his efficiency coming. And, I thought, okay, maybe if Zeke gets suspended, then he'll just have to throw more and maybe he'll do it. But these are two guys that I could have had late, and just they weren't really on my radar in terms of, options at quarterback. So, I've been really, really impressed by them. And, I think to your point about Kirk Cousins and the Redskins, I think we need to talk about them. So tonight we're mixing it up a little bit. We're just going to go kind of through all the positions and talk about guys that are kind of on the fringe of what should we start these guys? Should we sit these guys? We'll work in any news and all that good stuff. But Damian, let's talk about that, because obviously Kirk Cousins he's been really good. He's been racking up the yards and the touchdowns, whether it's Chris Thompson on checkdowns, whether it's Jordan Reed, who all of a sudden comes out of nowhere to remind us he's a elite fantasy tight end. But Terrell Pryor is a guy a lot of people were real high on, third, fourth round. Oh, he's going to a better offense. He's going to emerge. He's going to be even stronger this season. He's been basically useless and has been passed by Josh Doxson on the depth chart. Jamison Crowder, like you mentioned, was supposed to be the safe floor play, the PPR monster, the guy who could, have 100 targets, catch 90-something balls, and, be a monster, and he hasn't been a thing. So, obviously Kirk Cousins is a must-start, Chris Thompson's a must-start, but among the pass catchers, are you comfortable using any of these guys this week?
No, not in the short term. I think we're seeing that Pryor is basically being phased out of that offense. And Crowder, I mean, there was talk last week coming off the bye there when they played the Niners about how they kind of wanted to get him involved again, run some plays specifically designed for him to kind of try to get him back on track. And, that didn't really happen. I think he had like 15 yards that game. Had kind of a big catch in the first quarter here on Monday night, and then not really much beyond that. I just think, I guess going in, maybe it's, revisionist history to kind of talk about kind of maybe why we should have seen this coming now. But, with Pryor, the fact that we're talking about a guy who basically changed position at age 26, not really a great, track record of success for guys like that. Yeah. Not like there's been many examples really, but still something that, now maybe makes a little bit more sense. And Crowder, not really being a physically dominant player, just kind of a product of that offense. I just obviously, I think it speaks volumes about Cousins that he's still able to get this production. I think, kudos to kind of Jay Gruden and that whole system, showing that it's not really dependent on, the physical talent as much as it is kind of the scheme there. And even last year when they had that great offensive season, it wasn't like, they had Pierre Garcon and Deshaun Jackson, which are fine players, but it's not Randy Moss, and Chris Carter. It's not like they were doing it because they had Hall of Famers on the outside there. So, and that's really been the case for I think a lot of these. I mean, when we talked about Wentz, what's so impressive is that Jeffrey's having a pretty terrible season right now, and Ertz is really the only. I mean, Aguilar's been a nice surprise, but that's something that came out of nowhere. Ertz is really the only guy that's kind of really producing. And it's just, again, it's a scheme thing. They're getting, production really, it's the backup tight end here. It's the fourth string wide receiver. It's Mac Hollins catching a long touchdown. And we're seeing that across the league kind of where I think, just it's showing us really, I guess not, de-emphasizing the importance of these star players, but just showing the value in having a competent, offensive coordinator or a head coach and kind of having a system, again, we see it with the Rams and kind of the offense they've had where if you're calling the right plays and you're putting guys in the right position, you don't need superstars to put up points.
I think to your point, though, like, I know Deshaun Jackson's not a superstar, but I think for what that offense needed, I think they need that field stretcher because you look at some of the teams you mentioned. Philadelphia, they brought in Torrey Smith. Is he a stud? Is he a fantasy star? No. But does he open up a lot for, Zach Ertz to be effective, for Alshon to do what he does, for Aguilar? Yeah, he does a lot. You look down in Tampa where Deshaun Jackson is. You look in New Orleans where Ted Ginn all of a sudden becomes a thing, and Michael Thomas is there, and Drew Brees obviously is Drew Brees. And you head out to the West Coast where Travis Benjamin's ripping the seam and opening up stuff for the tight end and for Keenan Allen. So I think those guys are really important, especially in vertical passing game offenses, to have that guy that can tear the top off the defense and make, the other guys have a lot more one-on-one, have a lot more openness so that the safeties aren't creeping down and kind of making it easy. And, it's one of those things that, we kind of take those guys for granted, and in terms of fantasy analysts week, we don't really care about them, but I think they actually do a lot for those offenses. So before we get into all the rest of the slate, I want to talk about a trade that went down. I wanted to pick your brain about it because when I first saw it, I was taken a little back, but I'd love to see where your head's at in regards to the trade and like kind of what your, I guess, initial reaction was, because I don't know if it was the same as mine. And I'm pulling it up right now. So for those of you that are listening live, please hold on. Okay, so it was Christian McCaffrey and Jarvis Landry. This is mind you, this is full PPR.
No, it's
A
half point.
half point. But and we do start deeper rosters, so we start 3 receivers, 2 running backs, and 2 flexes. And it was Christian McCaffrey and Jarvis Landry. So, pretty good haul there for Jordy Nelson, Michael Thomas, and CJ Prosise. So, I guess when you saw this trade, what was like your initial reaction? And now that you've kind of had some time to think about it, has that shifted at all?
So, well, let's throw Prosise out. I don't think he's going to be started much in this trade. And if we look at it as a 2 for 2, Jordy and Thomas for McCaffrey and Landry, it definitely jumped out at me. And like you said, initial instincts, just because you see those names, and the first thing that popped in my head was, I have a couple leagues where I paid $90 to get Jordy and Michael Thomas. Those are 2 top 6, top 7 receivers at worst in terms of preseason value.
Yep.
And I think what the next thing that happens is last week with Brett Hundley for Jordy, and the fact that I can't remember the last time I've seen a passing offense with that many skilled players look that incompetent. I mean, we've seen just nameless career backups, journeyman backups, Rex Grossman, Kyle Orton, guys being able to come in and throw for 250 yards, and Brett Hundley looked like somebody who's never played football, let alone a guy who for 3 years in college basically led an offense that scored 40 points a game.
Like they had some sort of contest for all the season ticket holders, and Brett Hundley is the guy that won, that got to be quarterback for the Packers for a day.
Yeah, bring one of their owners down. So I guess, in that context, and a little bit with Michael Thomas too, I think the Saints as a whole, it's a little bit odd because they're playing much better as a team. This is actually the most competitive squad they've had in a few years here. But Breeze's numbers are way down. He's not thrown for anywhere near as many yards as he has in the past. And even with the Snead injury, Thomas isn't exactly getting peppered with targets here. He had that 11-yard game 2 weeks ago, had a couple, 50, 60-yard games, hasn't really had that, 120-yard, 2-touchdown game that we were kind of had come to expect after last season. So, you're buying low on those 2 guys, a little bit. I think Thomas can certainly bounce back. I think it's going to be hard for Jordy to really kind of get back, even 80% of his value with Hundley the way they look right now. But I still think he's a startable player, especially, like you mentioned, the format there with the 2 flexes and the 3 receivers. But all in all, I think it's a decent deal. I think it's just, it's interesting because the Jordy Thomas side, I definitely think they kind of have the upside there of being guys that can get you a lot of touchdowns, can put up those big yardage games. It's just the floor is kind of dropped because of the circumstances, especially for Jordy, whereas with Landry and McCaffrey, it's almost the opposite. I mean, Landry's touchdown in 3 straight games, that's something that we really haven't seen from him ever. The targets, double-digit targets, but it's still, it's 5, 6, 7-yard passes. And same thing for McCaffrey. I mean, he's catching 6, 7 passes, but it's for 35 yards. So in full point PPR, it would definitely, be a no-brainer to get just that many receptions on your team. And half point, it kind of brings it down a little bit. I mean, even if you have an 8-catch game, that's 4 points instead of the 8 in full. So I think you're kind of relying on Landry to basically, kind of set a new career high in touchdowns here, and McCaffrey to, just get something going on the ground, because regardless of what he does in the pass game, if he's catching 6 passes for 40 yards a week, I mean, you can get that from, a receiver that's probably on the waiver wire, get 4 for 50, and it's the same thing. You need him to start giving you some rushing yards. But I think it's a floor and upside trade. I think, getting Landry and McCaffrey, it's a little bit safer. The upside isn't as high, but I think in terms of, needing guys to start in that format, I'd almost probably prefer that side right now, just by a little bit.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think initially, we saw the names and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? I didn't realize we could get Michael Thomas for so cheap. And, I really think it's a very buy low, sell high trade. You're selling Jarvis Landry at his peak value, right? He's had 2 big games. He's had 2 games where he's been 3 games in a row with double-digit targets, 3 games in a row with touchdowns. Jarvis Landry's not a big touchdown guy, so you know that's going to regress a little bit. And obviously, with Matt Moore coming in, I still like this offense a lot, and I actually think it could get a little bit better. But I think Devontae Parker comes back. Kenny Stills is going to be a thing. I think he comes down, and then McCaffrey. Like you mentioned, in Carolina's offense, like you literally from one week to another have no idea what you're getting. One week you could have Cam Explosion, 35 points, Funchess and Benjamin are stars, and McCaffrey finds the end zone, and they're great. And then other weeks they just completely fall over themselves, do nothing, and they're all kind of useless. Where in Michael Thomas, like you kind of mentioned it, but 7 for 82 last week against Green Bay, but before that 3 for 11 in the bye. So I think if this trade happens, after week 4, when he went back to back 7 for 87, 8 for 89 with the touchdown in both games, I don't think it happens. Even if we work under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is out, and Jordy's still catching from Hundley and had this terrible game. Jordy's also heading on the bye, which in the short term, like you mentioned, with starting, you can start up to 5 receivers. It's hard to do. Like it's something you'll have to soak up, but I don't know. I think the Jordy Thomas side will be fine. I think there's more upside there. I think you'll get 2 stud receivers, and I honestly think with the bye week, I think the Packers will clean up their offense a little bit and make it look a little bit better. And I think come next kind of down the stretch, I think that'll be a much, much better side. I'd much rather have that side.
Yeah, time will tell. I think it probably depends a little bit too on the kind of the roster construction of those two teams, which we don't have in front of us right now. But it'll be interesting. I think again, like you said, it's a floor and upside deal, but you kind of hit it there with the timing where. Even like you said, considering the Jordy situation with the quarterback change, if Landry doesn't have that touchdown spike here, or if McCaffrey doesn't have that 12 catch game 2 weeks ago or so, kind of our perception of those players probably changes a little bit, and it might be a little bit harder to make that deal, at least as a 2 for 2. Maybe you can still kind of sell Jordy, for Landry or for McCaffrey in a 1-on-1, but throwing in both of those receivers might be a little bit tougher.
Yeah, and I think this is a good kind of idea for our listeners. If you can absorb a bye week guy, the time to trade for him is right as they're going on bye. Because if a player like Jordy Nelson, or a guy you like better, is heading on bye, that's going to be the cheapest time to buy them. And owners are going to say, oh, well, I have to deal with the bye week, and I don't have anybody to plug in his spot. And, so you can give him 80 cents on the dollar and give him this player that they can plug in right away. And they'll be, oh, okay, that's a good deal for me. Let me do that. And then if you can absorb it, you have enough depth at that position. I think that's a good way to upgrade your talent without overpaying or spending too much. So let's talk some quarterbacks, Damian. I'm going to throw out a few names of guys. Obviously, between injuries and bye weeks, and it's just the next 3 weeks are going to be rough. And obviously, having someone like Tom Brady, having Drew Brees, even Russell Wilson, who's starting to figure it out, it's coming along. Matt Ryan, let's start with him. At the Jets, obviously, it looks like a great matchup, but so has a lot of his other matchups. So has at New England, who up until last week when Matt Ryan played them, had allowed a 300-yard passer in every single game, including Josh McCown. Had a good matchup against Miami, had 24 completions, 248 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Is Matt Ryan just I'm gonna play him anyways, even though he's been struggling and things will get better, or do you think there's serious concerns and you're considering looking for other options if they're available?
There's definitely a little bit of concern. It's not so much with him and kind of the way he looks or anything like that. This offense, I haven't watched them that closely aside from last week when they played the Patriots, and that was just one of the worst called games I've seen. I don't know what Sarkisian is doing, but they had the ball on the 1, and didn't give Devontae Freeman, they just made him the highest paid running back in the NFL. They didn't give him a single touch. They ran a sweep.
Anytime you can run a sweep on fourth down, you have to do it, especially when you're on the goal line. You have
to. Well, I mean, a wide receiver sweep at that to your gadget guy. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, it's not like they're void of weapons. It's not like they have Julio Jones and Devontae. Oh wait, they do have Devonta Freeman and Julio Jones.
I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe Ryan will just be like, "Screw this! I'm just going to call my own plays," and that'll get him back on track.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. You know, they haven't a lot of these games they just haven't really had the volume. I don't know if it's maybe their defense is better or they haven't really played a lot of great offensive teams. It feels like just as a whole, this first half of the season, there's just been a lot of really like shitty performances from teams. I mean, last week alone, I think there was 3 teams that got shut out or didn't score an offensive touchdown. So
and then there was the poop-tacular contest between the Browns and Titans, which was 9-6 in overtime.
Yeah, the poop factor, as Simmons would say. Yeah. So I mean, look, you have to play them. Especially when you consider there's you do. You have 6 quarterbacks on bye.
Let me ask you this: would you rather start Andy Dalton at home versus Indianapolis or Matt Ryan at the Jets? Because for me, the answer is easy, and my guess is probably not the one you're about to give me.
I mean, I could see going with Dalton.
Mm-hmm. That's my answer.
Yeah, I guess I mean, if Julio and AJ Green are basically canceling each other out, and at that point, I'm gonna take the guy that's at home maybe, and has been, he didn't look great last week, but it seems like they're throwing the ball a lot lately. That was another situation. I mean, Mixon was getting 8 yards a pop in the first half, and then he didn't get a single carry in the second half when it was a 1-possession game for the entire third quarter. So
terrible
good
coaching
job.
Is an epidemic.
Yeah, good job, Marvin Lewis.
I mean, they're on their second OC, and the problems are continuing. So maybe the problems aren't with the OC. Maybe the problems are with the head coach. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe 14 years is enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty small sample size. We might want to give it another 14 and see what happens.
Can't get enough.
Yeah,
enough data on that guy.
Phil Rivers, I know he's owned in almost 90% of Yahoo leagues, but if he's out there, I'd much rather start him at New England. Matthew Stafford versus Pittsburgh. I know the Steelers have been good, but
no. They're not going anywhere near Stafford. The dude's been talk about a poop factor. What's his YPA this year?
Let's have a friendly little wager. You take Matt Ryan, I'll take Matt Stafford. Better performance this week.
Love it.
All right. Marcus Mariota, is he a guy that you're holding through the bye week? Or if you need to drop him to fill spots, are you comfortable doing it knowing that there's probably other quarterbacks on the bench on the waiver wire that you could roll with, or whoever you happen to be rolling with this week? If you have, Derek Carr, if you have Jameis, if you have Rivers, if you have Alex Smith, who we'll talk about here in a second, are you comfortable dropping him?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's tough to carry 2 QBs. I think you can cut him. I think, if you're picking up, if it's I probably still wouldn't cut him. I don't know. If you need a QB for this week, and if it's, whatever, a 12-team league, a 14-team league, and really the only options available to you are, let's say maybe McCown, Matt Moore, Trevor Siemian, CJ Beathard. I don't think I drop him for those guys. I need to pick those guys up for this week, but I wouldn't really want to have that as my plan for the rest of the year. But if it's a little bit shallower than that, and I mean, you get somebody like Tyrod Taylor, or
where are you at with Tyrod? Because I think he's a really good case, and if you look at his schedule, he has Oakland, he is at the Jets, he has New Orleans, he has the Chargers and KC. That's in the New England in Week 13, Indy, Miami. If I can pick up Tyrod, I'm very comfortable dropping Mariota. I think Tyrod will be better the rest of the way, and he's got an amazing schedule where I'm comfortable rolling him out every single week for the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy too, because I think he's got one of the higher floors for a quarterback, just in the sense that you know that. I mean, they have nobody to throw to on that
Yeah.
team. Um, and
Did
just saw you
did
see
you
those
see did you see what I
the
tweeted at
Zay
Ronald?
Jones.
Yeah. And
I
Ronald's reaction's the best. It was
I
just the
mean
best.
that like I could walk on an NFL field right now and give you those numbers
No, but
in terms of like,
I had the
reception
Bills
percentage.
Mafia all up in my mentions talking about how the 11 of the 28 targets have been catchable balls, and I'm just like, I don't know. I watched the quarterbacks he played with at East Carolina. Like the throws couldn't be that bad. Like they had like me and you playing quarterback for East Carolina. He seemed to do okay. So I don't know. Maybe he's just not good for the NFL. Maybe he's just not fast enough. Maybe that I don't know. Maybe that could be. But no, he's good.
It's
He's good. It's Tyrod's fault who had all these elite
it's
quarterbacks. Well, and he
yeah,
has he has Jordan Matthews coming back, which is good to see. Charles Clay hopefully returns at some point. I don't know. I'm very comfortable rolling him out the rest of the way.
yeah. Well, the thing is he's gonna get you at least 20 rushing yards most weeks. And that's 2 points right there. That's another it's the equivalent of 50 passing or so. Can get you even more than that as we saw. And he's not a guy that's ever going to have that 3-4 interception game. That's just not the way they kind of run that offense. So at the same time, you're also never going to get 350 and 3 touchdowns from him. So again, if you're confident in the rest of your team, I think he's a good option at quarterback. If you're kind of hoping you can get the guy that's going to give you a 30-point game because you need to make up ground on your other spots, then you might need to look elsewhere. But with regard to Mariota, I'm totally fine with using Taylor there. So yeah, I think again, you got to look at your team, but Mariota certainly not above being droppable.
Yep. Let's talk about Alex Smith because I think he's in a really good spot. Obviously, he's been incredible this year. But he is at home, so that's good to see. But he's facing the Denver Broncos, a Broncos team that has, it's really, really tough on passing games. But I think the thing that really makes Alex Smith a lot safer than most quarterbacks is that their Broncos are really bad against opposing tight ends, and they're really bad in the middle of the field. So I think they could do a lot with Kelsey. I think they could find ways to get Tyreek Hill the ball. And I think Alex Smith does enough where, obviously he's not going to throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns, but he's not going to do that most weeks anyways. But he'll throw for 250, maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe he runs for one. I could see him having a really nice game here. So if I own Alex Smith, I'm very comfortable rolling him out. What about you?
I don't love it just because I still have a lot of respect for the Denver
Hmm.
the corners there. I guess the counterpoint to that is the Chiefs don't really um, with the scheme they run, they don't really rely on kind of one-on-one matchups
Hmm.
um, to beat guys, which is good. But also from a game flow narrative, I think the Broncos look so bad on offense right now that I'm just worried they're not really going to be able to put up points.
They're going to get
And
right
it's
this
going to
week, Damien.
be yeah, that'd be nice.
Did you see how bad the Raiders looked 2 weeks ago and then what they did last week? I mean, we need to talk about Amari Cooper at some
Yeah, I
point.
mean, yeah, right. But the Raiders also have Derek Carr, not Trevor Simeon, and it's a disaster. But hopefully they get right. But if they don't, and this turns into like a 16-3 game, it's really going to kind of limit the because that's the nice thing too is you saw it last week in that Raiders game is that when they're forced to put up points, the Chiefs can do it. They
Yeah,
have good players.
yeah.
It's just they still I don't think they want to be in that situation. So if they can avoid it, they're not going to be playing that way, and it's hard for me to see. Denver putting up 28 points in this game or something like that. So I agree with you that Smith is safe. I just don't think there's really anywhere near the upside that we saw from him last week.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think 250, maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns is kind of his ceiling, and probably more like 250 and 1 to 2 touchdowns. But if
Yeah.
like, if he throws for one, he runs for one. I think you're pretty solid. Like, would you use Tyrod Taylor over Alex Smith?
No, I'd go with Smith.
Yeah. Phillip Rivers over Alex Smith?
Yeah, I'd probably do that. I'm not. I don't think New England suddenly fixed their
No.
defense.
I think that's the Falcons looking really bad. What about Roethlisberger? Are you back in on him? 224 yards, 2 touchdowns versus the Bengals. Um, do you think they've got it figured out? Oh, and did you see Martavis Bryant isn't playing this week?
Oh, they make him inactive? Or they
They
said they're
they
gonna make him inactive?
he basically said that the coach said that he won't be playing this week.
I think he stole Juju's bike.
You think so?
I
I could
think
see
I
that.
think I
He
definitely
he
think
can't make it to practice, coach. I don't know what happened. Like he
that's
didn't
like
come.
it's the Friday Night Lights where he takes his helmet so
Hmm.
the backup can't go
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Um, that's-
Hey, that is the most sensible explanation I've heard of that story thus far.
also, I mean, being 20 years old and a pro athlete and not having your license is a preposterous move.
Mm.
But I guess good for him. You can't get a DUI when you're not driving, right? Um,
Yeah, it seems like if you're an NFL star, you can take Uber a few places, but everybody needs a good bike ride from time to time. I don't know that riding a bike in Pittsburgh in December is what you want to do, but
yeah, but get some snow tires on
yeah,
it.
sure, everybody does it.
uh,
uh,
Juju.
uh,
Juju.
yeah,
He also
I
got
love Juju.
Mia Khalifa hit him with the
Oh, and then he hit her with the stiff arm. That was
yeah,
great.
he hit her with the left bell stiff arm. So that was good. He got a Twitter follow from me last night, so I'm in on Juju. Um, but I mean, look, Ben looked a lot. He did look a lot better, just like physically in terms of his throws and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's still, this is road Ben, that was home Ben. I know they kind of switched places with the Jacksonville game, but still haven't really seen him put together a great performance on the road. I do think the Detroit defense is pretty legit. Not like the way we think of Denver, somebody that we're just afraid to play our guys
Mhm.
against, but that I don't think they're kind of the pushover that they've been in previous seasons where
No,
teams could
totally
go
agree.
into.
And so it's
Yeah.
it's it's Brown, it's Bell, and that's it for Pittsburgh. I like if I'm playing daily, I think I'm avoiding Antonio Brown this week. I know he's been a monster, but I think Darius Slay can play, and I could see them locking him on AB all day, and maybe it's a random like 80-yard performance by Juju, by Eli Rogers. But if I'm playing daily, I think there's other receivers that I'm going to target and kind of shy away from Brown.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially because his price isn't coming down. It's like you look at DK, he's going to be like 10K, and at that point, it's like he's got to really go off just to get you kind of the value you need there. So, not a lot of room for surplus value in that play.
Yep. If you want to talk streamers, if you're digging deep, obviously Dalton and Tyrod are my favorites. If they're available, add them. If you want to go deeper, I know you're gonna hate all these names, Damien, and I'm here for it. I like Josh McCown versus Atlanta at home. He's been great the past 2 weeks. I think that continues. I like Trevor Siemian at Kansas City, and I like C.J. Beathard at Philly. Come up in my mentions. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine. Obviously, yes, I'm not playing any of these guys over Alex Smith, over Tyrod, over Dalton, over Phil Rivers, obviously, over Cam Newton. I don't know. I might play them over Big Ben just because I don't like him, but Ben's probably the play. I did the Hundley thing last week and that didn't work out. Great for me. I still got wins, so it's all good.
That staff dyno we have. My quarterbacks are Jay Cutler, Brian Hoyer, and Trevor Siemian. So
You want to hear something awesome? I have a super flex league. I'm rolling out Ben Roethlisberger. I'm rolling out Jay Cutler, who is now obviously hurt, and I'm rolling out Eli Manning, who had all of his wide receivers murdered. So, things are going great for me there.
Go with like the double tight end stack or something.
I love it.
No
Yeah,
QBs.
yeah. I mean, I'll play one if I have, because I have to. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not pretty. But I don't hate Beathard, and I don't hate Josh McCown and Trevor Siemian. This is obviously deeper formats, leagues where multiple quarterbacks are owned. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So I would go McCown, I would go Siemian, and then I would go Beathard. That's my order after Dalton and after Tyrod. Let's talk some running backs. And I want to talk about Jordan Howard, because this is a guy that when things are good, when the Bears are in games where they can have a good game script, he's been great. He's had 167 yards against Baltimore. He had 2 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. But this week they're on the road in New Orleans. This feels like a game, especially the way their kind of streak is gone, and the game they put against Cam where they had the 2 long defensive touchdowns where they kind of able to win that game. I feel like New Orleans puts it on them pretty good this week. So if you're a Jordan Howard owner, is it plug and play automatic, or are you considering, hey, if I have some better options, this is probably a closer to the 9 carries for 7 yards or the 18 for 53 that he put up in other tough matchups?
Well, look, I think that it's going to be really hard to get away from Howard just because he's become one of those few guys that we know the Bears don't want to let Trubisky throw it, and we know that if they could have it their way, they'd give the ball, to Howard 27 times. And I agree that that's going to be hard to do in this spot, but at the same time, I do think their defense is, as we saw last week, they're better than we thought. And that's not saying they're going to shut down the Saints, but I think when your whole kind of team approach, team mindset here is basically to play good defense, to run the ball, to kind of keep time of possession in your favor. The floor is, again, it might not be a great yards per carry, but you just know that he's going to get the volume. And again, while the Saints defense is better, it's not like they've gone from being like I said, almost like with the Lions, the last 3 years they've been like the worst defense ever, and all of a sudden they're a little bit better. But again, it's not like they're somebody we should really be afraid of or stay away from. So I think Howard's going to be totally fine in this matchup. Again, it's being such a one-dimensional offense is going to be hard for him to break off a 70-yard run because everybody's kind of waiting for him to get the ball. But there's just not enough guys, especially with the buys, that I'm going to be confident in their workload to really slide Howard anywhere outside the top 10.
Yeah, and I guess that's fair. He's probably if I own him in season long, I'm playing him. If I'm playing DFS, I'm avoiding him. What's up with the Pats? You're a resident Pats fan. James White obviously has his role carved out. I think he's the pass catcher. I think they'll find unique ways to get him the ball. I think they look for him in close. He's a guy I'm very fine playing. Beyond him, Dion Lewis, Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead. Are you owning any of these guys? And if so, are you playing any of these guys?
I think it's a mess. It's not. I mean, we should have kind of seen this coming. I don't think you really have anybody to blame but yourself if you kind of went in heavy on any of these guys. It is a little interesting that Dion Lewis is basically, he was kind of James. If you think back 2 years ago, he was basically what James White is now, maybe even a little bit better. Before he tore that ACL, I mean, he was unbelievable. He was catching 6-7 passes a game, and it wasn't like 5 or 6 yards. He was going, like 7 for 85. He was a legitimate receiving threat. And now it's like kind of it's flipped, and they've given that role to White. I think, I don't know if it's coming off the Super Bowl, coming off his performance in the playoffs.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, you gain trust kind of putting up, having a big performance in big spots like that. But then Lewis has kind of come in and basically taken a lot of the Gillislee role when, Gillislee's been struggling. He had the fumble. And Lewis doesn't seem like your prototypical kind of, early down back or so, just because he did kind of, start his career more as a receiving threat. So I think Burkhead's out of the picture. I think he'll get his, usual 3 to 5 touches and kind of be a mismatch depending on where they line him up. But I don't think he really has any use in any fantasy leagues right now. Gillislee in standard, if it's like 12 teams or deeper, you probably still have to hold him. Because I still do think they're going to want him to be their primary red zone guy, goal line guy. And again, with an offense kind of as proficient as the Patriots are, it's just there's going to be so many opportunities that we know he can get touchdowns. But White remains somebody that I'm really only comfortable playing in PPR. Even in half-point PPR, I don't really feel great about it because there's just not a lot of carries for him, and it's tough for him to get in the end zone. Yeah. And right now, just the way the past couple of weeks have gone, I think Lewis is, out of the entire group, in a standard league or in half point, probably your best bet to get you, 6-7 points.
Yep.
which isn't a lot, but it's just if you have to play one guy, that's who I'm going with. But ideally, I'd look to try to kind of get some backfield action from another team.
Yeah, always got to get that backfield action, baby.
Love it.
Dion Lewis is a guy I recommended in my waiver wire column this week. I like him. I think he's trending in the right direction. 7 carries, 11 carries, 13 carries. He's a guy that I think he's stolen the Gillislee role, and I think him and White could be the 1-2 punch. And if you have to drop Gillislee, if you have enough depth at running back, I'm perfectly fine doing it. Rex Burkhead, I'm with you. Everybody try to kind of get him into the fantasy, darling, but I don't see it. So James White, Dion Lewis, the guys that I want, and the guys I'm playing. What are we doing with the Minnesota Vikings? Obviously, great matchup against the Browns. A Browns defense that was actually been better this year. Obviously, having Myles Garrett back helps a lot. Slowed down the Titans running game a week ago. Obviously Latavius had his big breakout game, and it feels very Adrian Peterson-esque of that, a week ago where he broke out, and then all of a sudden the following week it was 12 carries for 15 yards or whatever. So Latavius, Jerick McKinnon, is this a good matchup where you're playing both? Like, where are you at?
No, I think it's a misconception that this is a good matchup just because it's the Browns and we're kind of used to the Browns getting, run over. But I think they're allowing 2.9 yards per carry this year.
Yeah, they are. Let's see. They are currently sixth. They have the sixth best rush defense. The only team that's really done anything is Baltimore had a big game against them, and Houston had a big game against them. Outside of that. And Cincinnati, but I think that was more via the pass. So, but yeah, I mean they've been good against the run for sure.
I'm with you on Murray. I don't think this is anything that continues. Good for him. He kind of had his game, but whatever. I want these guys to succeed. Little golf clap for Latavius Murray, but. I don't really feel great about either of these guys. I think the issue is going to be that the fact that Murray had that game last week, I think it's going to give him more work this week, and that's going to take away some carries from McKinnon. Again, I don't think it's going to be effective work because, like we said, the Browns have a good run D, but McKinnon's going to catch the passes, which helps. So I think that makes him a flex play still, and he is by far the more explosive of the two. So at least you have that opportunity to kind of take it for a long score. So McKinnon's a flex play for me. Murray's like a very low end flex play. Just if you're hurt with buys, I can see it, but I'm not really proactively putting him in my lineup anywhere.
Yeah, I like McKinnon this week. I think he can be a good play, and especially if you're with the running back landscape as big of a mess as it is. Like I'm fine rolling him out there, especially in PPR. I'm playing Latavius at one place this week, and it's a 16-team league where we have to start like 5 running backs, and desperate times call for desperate measures. Other than that, I think people are going to see that last week. I think they're going to pencil him into their lineups, and I think they're going to end up disappointed. Let's talk about the Eagles running back situation. Wendell Smallwood was back last week, looked pretty good. LeGarrette Blount's still kind of doing his thing, getting his kind of normal allotment of touches. Home game against the Niners, basically 2 touchdown favorites. Should have a good opportunity to run the ball a good amount in this game. Are you comfortable using both? Either? Where are you at?
I'm. It's funny when you said that. 16-team league and you guys are starting 5 running backs. And for some reason, like my head did the math real quick and I was like, 80 running backs. And I was looking at the rundown and saw that LeGarrette Blount was next. And all I could think of was when we did our consensus ranks like last year in the preseason and Ronald put LeGarrette Blount at like 88. Yeah. We literally ranked like 90 running backs, and he ranked him 88, and the guy ended up leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns, which, I mean, we all got a ton of stuff wrong. I'm not picking on Ronald, but, like, I don't know why that number just popped in my head. Oh, man. I miss that guy. But
he is one of a kind.
Getting back on track here. I don't like Smallwood. I don't really know
that's what she said.
Who likes? Nobody likes Smallwood. but you're killing me. You're killing me here between. No, look. I mean, look. I don't know. We saw Clement catch the touchdown last week.
Yeah, that was
So it's
annoying.
not. It's not like he's the main passing downs guy. I don't. He started the game, which was weird, but we still know that Blunt's going to be the guy at the goal line. He's going to be the guy killing clock when they're up big, which they should be in this spot. So out of those options, I'm going with Blunt just because I think he's going to get the most touches. But again, the upside's probably like 70 yards and a touchdown. Floor's probably like 40 yards without a score. So
Yeah.
not a huge range there, but I definitely still prefer him to any of the other options
Yeah,
in Philly right now.
I don't hate Smallwood either. I think maybe last week was kind of a get him back on the floor, get him back on the field. I still think he's that kind of passing down running back. I know Clement had the touchdown like you mentioned, but I think he takes that role back. So if you're in a pickle, like I don't hate Smallwood. But yeah, I'm with you. If I'm picking between the two, I like LeGarrette Blunt. Isaiah Crowell is just not to be played, right? Like he hasn't. Let's see, his tops. He has 60 yards, no touchdowns, 1 2 point. Yeah, I mean, people own him in a lot of leagues, but I'm running far away.
It's crazy to think he was a third round pick.
Can we?
But
We literally should go through the third round and just look at like the names because like Crowell was in there, Terrell Pryor was in
yeah,
there, like all these
yeah,
guys that people expected a lot and it never happened.
it's not good.
All right, so I'm gonna throw out a few names at you as we kind of move through the rest of the running backs. Are you trusting Rob Kelly this week, or do you think that's just a big mess and you're not going there?
No, I think that I definitely wouldn't play him this week, but I did see that he's been dropped in a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of like a sneaky guy you can actually pick up right now.
Hmm.
You know, just because I still Thompson, I mean, the guy's really never made it through a full season, and we aside from maybe that one game, it's still pretty clear they don't want to give him very many touches. And P Ryan hasn't looked great, so I think as the season wears on and kind of the weather gets colder, I think we could see Kelly become a guy that's going to be getting 15 to 18 touches a game,
Yep.
um,
I like that
and
call a
kind of
lot.
be kind of be what LeGarrette Blunt is right now, maybe even a little bit better. And you can pretty much get him for free everywhere now. So just a name to keep in mind.
Yep, I've suggested him in the past couple waiver wires, and people are starting to figure it out. No Marshawn Lynch this week, so Jalen Richard, uh, DeAndre Washington, both, neither. Where are you at?
Both and neither, is that an option? I don't know. I don't know who's going to be the guy. I think from everything we've seen, it's Richard's been a little bit better, but Washington got the work last week. He got the red zone touch, so I can't. I guess. I mean, they're both low end flex plays. I think I'd prefer Richard.
Mhm.
I think we've seen a little bit more from him. I don't think either of these guys is really going to go off, and it could be a case where one gets 9 touches, the other gets 8. So it's tough to kind of invest in either one, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be 20 touches for one and 5 for the other. So whichever one you get, I think if you're just looking for 5 points, there's a decent shot they'll get it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm Richard over Washington, but yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, obviously, they're both. If you need help, they're interesting names, but I don't know that I'm rushing out to add them. Uh, Talk to me about Amari Cooper. Are we assuming that he obviously 19 targets was a big number, big catch day, torched the poor cornerback opposite Marcus Peters, but are we fine? Like, is Cooper back, or are you still going forward with some hesitation?
No, I mean, you have to play him now. You can't. It's just kind of sit a guy off a 19 target game, where he put up 200 yards. It's not a great matchup, but I mean, I don't know. Both Evans and Deshaun Jackson had pretty good games last week. Jameis threw for over 300, so we'll see what Carr does here. But I don't think they're going to be, I think they're going to be a pass-heavy attack in this situation with the Lynch suspension. Not really sure what's going on in the backfield. So On targets alone, as disappointing as he's been, he still has the physical talent to succeed, which is kind of what we saw last week. So I definitely think he's a guy you have to play this week.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm with you. And obviously, it was nice seeing Carr look healthy again. So I'm good with Crabtree. I'm good with Cooper. I'm good with them all. Let me scroll through some receivers. Alshon Jeffrey. Obviously, a nice matchup against the Niners, but this is a guy that's 2 for 37, 4 for 71, 3 for 31, 3 for 29, 4 for 56, 2 touchdowns on the season. He's not a volume monster like he used to be. Are you fine rolling him out until, unless you have like some amazing options?
Well, this week, yeah, it's just the Niners are so bad, but I don't really see a huge turnaround coming from um, Jeffrey. Just because, I mean, if you look at how effective that offense has been, um, I can't, it's going to be hard to kind of go into the the meetings this week coming off, another game where Wentz just dominant and be like, what we need to do? We really need to like give Alshon 12 targets.
Yeah.
Maybe if they were struggling, then sure, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I don't see a whole lot more volume coming his way, and he's been incredibly inefficient this year. I think he's under 50% of his target. I mean, not Zay Jones level, but
Nobody's that
not
bad.
better. Yeah.
Um,
So.
Texans receivers. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is a must start, but Will Fuller, Deshaun Watson, putting him right back in your lineup. Lamar Miller at Seattle this week.
I don't think you have to play Fuller. I mean, what's he have? 7 catches, 5 touchdowns. It's
Yeah, that's
you
that's
don't
what you're
you
looking
don't
for. Less catches with more touchdowns is what you're always looking for.
yeah, less is more. Um, I don't think he's going to get a big score here. On the road, it's just
Yeah.
I need a higher floor to play somebody than what Fuller's giving you right now.
Yep. What about the Lions guys? Marvin Jones, T.J. Jones. Obviously, Golden Tate is out this week. Are you just kind of avoiding that offense in a matchup where the Steelers' defense has actually been really good against opposing teams that are trying to pass the ball?
I'm going to play Marvin because he might see 14 targets this game
Mm-hmm.
with kind of
Like last week.
everybody else on. Yeah, yeah. So
That is pretty. Like last week, he had 14 targets. He only caught 6 of them. But I mean, the week before, he was 6 catches on eight targets. So I mean, it seems like the little more depth of target. So that could be a problem. But yeah, I think
right.
I'm with
Yeah,
you.
he's a big downfield guy. They have Tate do all the stuff underneath, so he's definitely his catch percentage is going to be a lot lower, but he's going to also get you a lot more yards per target.
Yep.
So you have to play him. But the other guys, just I'm staying away. I don't know who it's going to be. And I could see this offense struggling a little bit, and not really having a clear number 2 behind him this week.
I don't mind. I don't hate T.J. Jones, but that's a deep play. I love Ted Ginn this week, and I love Kenny Stills this week. Stills is seeing all kinds of targets. He caught both of his touchdowns with Matt Moore. Baltimore's defense has been kind of up and down, and with that offense struggling, I think they're starting to get a little more frustrated and not doing what they kind of were doing earlier in the season. So Stills still available in half of leagues if you need a receiver this week. I love him. Ted Ginn, same thing. Like the volume these guys are seeing for receivers that don't typically see that kind of volume, it has been great, and they're producing with it. So I love it. Any other receivers you're interested in this week?
I like those 2 calls. I think yeah, we'll see if Parker plays. I think there's a decent chance he doesn't on Thursday. Obviously, if he's out, it helps Stills. But if you look at last year when Moore was in, he really threw to Stills a lot, even when Parker was on the field. So
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a play that's kind of making a lot of sense. I think this week aside, I think you can try to look at a couple guys. I know Demarius Thomas is a player coming off a really bad game here. Still hasn't scored a touchdown this season.
That's changing.
Yeah, I think he's a guy you can try to see if you can buy low on him right now. I offered somebody Pierre Garcon and James White for him in a league. We'll see what happens there, but you think he's going to get some positive regression here. We'll see if Sanders is back or not, but
Yeah, it doesn't look like Sanders is going to play, and if Sanders doesn't play, I actually like Benny Fowler. We talked about Marcus Peters is their number one corner, and the guy on the other side is just a train wreck. That's the guy that Mari Cooper lit up last week for 200 yards. That stuff's been happening all season long. If you're desperate, I think Benny Fowler's a name that, if you're digging deep, he's a guy that I like.
I think, also Nelson Aguilar, he's kind of climbing into that kind of wide receiver 3 range. Obviously, a terrific matchup. He scored in 4 straight games here. The games he hasn't scored in this year, I think he's gotten 50 yards or so. So a real poor man's Eric Decker, if you will. So far this season, obviously not a huge sample size, but I think with how well Wentz is playing, he's certainly somebody you can look to. And then, besides that, I mean, if you look at some of the deeper guys, you could go for kind of a dart throw with Jermaine Kearse or Robbie Anderson against the Falcons if the Falcons put up some points and the Jets are chasing. I don't hate those plays. I think
I told you I like Josh McCown, so I'm on board.
Yeah, Josh Doxson. I still wouldn't want to play him this week, but the fact that he played, I think 85% of their snaps, it looks like they're trying to kind of push him into that number 1 role. He's still pretty available. I think he's a terrific stash.
Yeah, I think to your point, he's a stash. He's a great guy that even if you don't need him this week, add him, because I think he could emerge as kind of what we thought Terrell Pryor was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's kind of the way I'm looking now. I think if Diggs is out again, Thielen could. I mean, everybody's already playing Thielen, but I think looking at it from a DFS side, possibly, he's not so cheap anymore. But we talked about how strong Cleveland's run defense is. If they're not able to get anything going on the ground there, and Diggs is out, I think Thielen's going to see a lot of targets, and he's another guy that's due for a touchdown.
Yep, him and we'll talk tight ends here in a second, but him and Kyle Rudolph are great plays this week. Obviously, the Browns are atrocious against the tight end. This game is in London, so be ready to set your lineups, obviously, for that. My only concern, I like this matchup for Case Keenum. People have kind of talked about him as a potential streaming option. There's no way I'm going near that. I could see this being an ugly game where they run the ball a lot. Because Laquan Treadwell would make sense, or I kind of like him, especially if Diggs is out. If Diggs plays, are you putting him right back in your lineup, or are you saying I don't know?
No, we talked about the injury splits with him. It's just when he's not at 100%, he tends to perform really poorly, and I don't see them pushing him. Situation where he's active and only gets, a handful of snaps. If they can kind of control this game, and there's just no point in risking him, in a London game against the Browns.
Yeah. Would you like good news, Damien, or would you like bad news? I got both for you.
Oh, you always go with the bad news. Bad news first.
Your boy Hightower on the Pats, with the defense has been amazing. They're playing so well. He's injured and he's going to miss multiple weeks.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, no. Maybe we'll bring back Ninkovich.
Sure. Sure. Yeah,
Bruschi, maybe Bruschi's available.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, I mean, we could go play linebacker. It might work well.
Tip top shape.
So you ready for the good news?
Yeah.
Our Brooklyn Nets are obviously doing work right now. They are going.
Are they up?
They are up, and they are going to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are going to win.
They fucking blew it last night against the.
I've been watching our Brooklyn Nets. I've been watching my boy D'Angelo Russell do work.
They're averaging 127 points a game. I mean, they're giving up 130, so it's a little bit of a concern. But they've been a lot of fun.
Defense is overrated.
Yeah, I haven't enjoyed watching them play, as much as I have this year in quite a few years, really, since even before the. Again, I wasn't huge in that whole Garnett Pierce thing, so it's a lot of fun now. And they're not a good team, but they're a fun team.
Yeah, which is what you're really looking for. That's as a Kings fan, we're not a good team, but I want to be a fun team, and we have moments. But I've been watching. I had free league pass, and I know this is what everybody came here for. Brooklyn Nets talk.
Yeah, we got that wins bet. So
yeah, your team's looking pretty good. If there was like competitive games, I mean, we went to Phoenix, and this is a team that scored 55 against Portland in a whole game, and we lost, and they were up double digits most of the time. So that tells you the
Good.
state of the Kings. Good things happening in Sacramento for sure. Let's talk tight ends. Obviously, Gronk must play. Travis Kelce must play. Zach Ertz must play. If you're playing DFS, is it Ertz? Is it Kelce? Is it Gronk? Who's your favorite option?
That's I generally don't like to pay up a tight end. Um, so I don't know if I'm going with any of those three guys. I think Ertz is probably the safest um, for cash games, um, just because he's been so consistent this year. I think he's got in like half point PPR scoring. I think his worst game this year is like 12 points, which is just crazy. But I think I like Hunter Henry this week a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know New England struggles against the tight end, and the Chargers have really kind of started to phase out Antonio Gates the past couple of weeks. Jason Witten's got a really good matchup.
Yep.
He's about as boring as they come, but just in terms of being able to catch a short touchdown or something, I think he gives you a decent shot there. And then if we look a little bit deeper, maybe
Can you believe Austin Seferian-Jenkins is an every week play?
yeah, that's wild. It's weird too because he's basically like the Jarvis Landry of like tight ends now. It's just he keeps catching like 6 yard passes, which I mean you look at kind of the physical mismatch he presents, and I say earlier in his career the guy's still only like 25, but like back with the Bucks it seemed like he was more of kind of a big downfield guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not necessarily getting those yards now, but he's getting a lot more catches and a lot more usage in the red zone. So definitely a very safe play there. Cameron Brate's been terrific.
So good.
60 yards
For
last week, and that was his worst game in like a month.
For season long, if we're digging deeper, I do like Tyler Croft this week against Indy. I think that's a guy that's pretty available that can be helpful. I still am buying the George Kittle. This will be a team that has to throw, and I think Philly's been susceptible to the pass. What about my boy Fleen Dog, Kobe Fleener? Home versus the Bears. Can we get back on the train? No, avoid.
Nope.
Just run away. Okay.
Train has left the station.
What about Zach Miller on the other side? Touchdown 2 weeks in a row. Obviously, not getting a ton of targets, which is frustrating. I think when you at least you want some sort of safety. But this could be a spot where he gets a touchdown. So
I can't. I mean, I like Miller. I think I'll probably end up starting him on my fishbowl team. Coming off a brutal defeat there.
yeah.
I had Amari Cooper and Alex Smith going on Thursday. I was like, man, gonna jump up to 5-2. It's gonna be solid. And the guy had put up like 230. It was insane. I was like, where are you getting these points from?
Yeah.
But brutal loss there. But I'll play Miller there. But they're not throwing enough. You can't play a tight end who the quarterback might complete 3 passes.
OJ Howard's a guy probably to avoid. I know he had 6 targets and caught all 6 of them and had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but coming into that game, 1 catch for 15, 0 for 0, 2 for 63, 1 for 12, 1 for 17. So will there be games the rest of the way where OJ Howard breaks off? Yeah, he's a really talented football player, but on a week-to-week basis against Carolina, there's no way I'm playing him this week.
Totally agree.
Okay. I think that covers it. Oh, one more. Jared Cook at Buffalo. Is he a guy, if you're looking for a tight end? I know he had 6 for 107 last week, but he's another one of those guys that have kind of had inconsistent workload, although with Derek Carr back and no Marshawn, maybe he gets a little more work this week.
I think the concern there is I don't think this is kind of going to be that back and forth shootout we saw at Kansas City. It's not how Buffalo plays, and if you cut down the number of plays they're going to have, and the number of it's going to be the number of targets. I don't think Cook is going to see double-digit targets here. I think it'll be one of those 3 for 35, maybe 4 for 50 games. But I probably try to look elsewhere.
Yeah, you're probably right. Probably a team to avoid. All right, Damien, this was a lot of fun. Good to catch up. Good to talk some fantasy. Good to talk some Brooklyn Nets basketball. Our Brooklyn Nets beating the
Where Brooklyn
Cavs.
at?
Yeah, Brooklyn, stand up. Come on. All right, for Damien Dabrowski, I'm